All right, we'll get started. A couple more people coming in. Thanks for joining us today. See, we've got a room full of e-commerce visionaries here. We've got a whole track around e-commerce, so I'll tell you a little bit about that at the end, but let's kick off e-commerce innovations to drive revenue in a hurry. So I'm Lynn Shear. I'm Director of Product Marketing for e-commerce at Apttus. I'm joined up here with Todd Browning, the GM of e-commerce, also Jess Ma, who heads up our professional services for e-commerce and CPQ. And we've got our partner here, managing partner at SixVertical, Chris Moyle. So we're going to take you through what's going on in B2B e-commerce. How many of you were here this morning and heard the Andy Hoare keynote about full spectrum selling and the research we did? So this is going to be an extension of what he talked about, really, and we're going to talk about how some practical applications of those dynamics that he talked about. And really, he talked about full spectrum selling. Another word for that is omnichannel. So I'm going to talk a little bit about omnichannel B2B commerce. The second thing going on in B2B e-commerce is speed. And I'll talk a bit about speed, both speed to market and also speed, fast, convenient experiences for your customers. So big opportunity in B2B e-commerce. Here are some ways some things you need to think about to drive success with B2B e-commerce, with Apttus e-commerce combined with Apttus CPQ and quote to cash. What do we mean by omnichannel? So again, whether you call this full spectrum selling or omnichannel, this is exactly what Andy Hoare spoke about this morning. It's about being able to deliver seamless, optimized experiences, first of all, across any channel or any customer touch point. So self-service e-commerce, your call center, field sales, even through your channel partners, you need to be able to have the same data, the same pricing, the same promotions available across all of those channels and be able to present it in a way that is consistent and compelling. So somebody could start an order online, maybe buy it outright through a typical e-commerce purchase, or maybe they want to submit it for quote. They're buying a larger volume than normal. They could submit it and your sales team can pick it up, put a quote together, push it back to them on the e-commerce experience, and they can finish the order. So the whole point here is that in both, whether you call it full spectrum selling or omni-channel B2B commerce, it's about delivering that consistent experience across, first of all, those sales touch points. The second dimension of omni-channel is any device, right? So we all walk around today with an iPhone in our pockets. We basically have a store to buy anything we want. We've become used to this in the consumer world for buying for ourselves. Well, as business buyers, I know I want that same experience. So now more and more people, Andy talked about this morning, increasingly they want to not only research their purchases online, their businesses' purchases online. That jumped from 53% to 68% who actually prefer to research without talking to a salesperson. He has another data point that he has shared, and once somebody makes that decision, actually 93% of business buyers today prefer to buy online if they can. So again, that entire shift to self-service ordering, it's not just about having self-service e-commerce, you've got to have a combination, you've got to have full spectrum. So the second thing that's going on in B2B commerce innovation is speed, right? And there are two dimensions here as well. First of all, and this is all about, again, meeting that rising customer expectation, that expectation of the business buyer to have the same compelling, consistent experience that they're getting in the B2C world today, in the consumer world. And the first piece of this is speed to market. Your competition as a business selling to other businesses is moving down this path. More and more enterprises that sell to businesses are adopting e-commerce, a self-service offering, and so you've got to have a way to get to market quickly with your self-service e-commerce offering. The second piece of this is the fast, convenient buying experiences. And that ties very much to the digital side of that, being able to deliver a great experience across any device, from a laptop on the desktop to a tablet to a smartphone. And that's precisely the demo you're going to see from our partner SixVertical today. So the first dimension of this we're going to talk about is the speed to market piece. And for that, I'm going to turn it over to Todd Browning, our GM of e-commerce.
Thank you, Lynn. So the first thing we're going to talk about, as he talked about, is speed to market, and Jess is going to go through that in detail. But one of the things that we wanted to do as a company when we started looking at the way that we could differentiate ourselves in the market, we knew that getting speed to value, and equally, if not more important, to get speed to feedback. So what that means is that we're trying to get you up and running as quick as possible in a minimum viable product approach or an agile methodology so that you can get that valuable feedback loop going from your customers so that you don't follow that old methodology of planning everything out today, spending 18 months or 24 months building something, and then getting to the end of that period of time and finding out it's not exactly what your customers need or want, and you've basically wasted all of that time. So our typical implementations, we get you up and running with a minimum viable product, everything you need to generate that first order in 8 to 10 weeks, and then we layer on top of that all of the more advanced features that you need from that point on. And I'll bring up Jess now and let her go into showing you how we do that.
Thank you, Todd. Right, what does this mean from an implementation standpoint? My role at Apttus is I oversee and I lead all of our e-commerce implementations. And what I've been seeing in the experience in the implementation world is we always start with your customer lifecycle, right? You map it out, and it typically involves being aware of your product or your brand and going all the way to operating and maintaining the contract or the product or the services. So we got to help you prioritize which of these interactions that are the most important and impactful to your customers and to your business. Right? It doesn't always have to be we boil the ocean and basically enable, using e-commerce, all of these transactions all at once or interactions. Right? So what you see here is a roadmap that we've built for one of our customers. Right? As you can see here, their minimum viable product, the phase one, is not necessarily to capture new revenue. Right? It is let us enable transactions and fulfillment with e-commerce. Right? This way our existing customers can buy our products so that it is easier for this customer to provide, to make it easier for their customers to do business with them. Then we build on top of that with phase two and phase three, and that is enabling other channels and enabling other users. Right? Another one of our high-tech manufacturing customers, right? Their MVP is different again. And it doesn't have to be, it's not a enabling new transaction. It is, hey, what is my high volume, low value transactions? Because that is costing my salespeople a long time. Right? They're spending equal amount of time getting those renewal deals and getting those high value, high volume and low value transactions. Spare parts is what I'm talking about in particular for another customer. So what they did is, instead of focusing on transact and fulfill for their phase one, they focus on retain, which is, hey, I already bought your products, now let me do 24/7 convenience of just ordering my spare parts over and over again. I want accuracy in price and accuracy in products, spare parts selection that will match my product. Right? They started with that. So what I would like to do is, if we do have the opportunity to work with you, is to, based on your priority and based on the high value-add interactions with your customers and with your partners, figure out what that MVP means for you and start delivering value in 10 to 12 weeks. Right? So that is how we would like to go about doing this.
So one of the other things that beyond just the speed to delivery, one of the things that we also looked at is that we wanted to differentiate ourselves in what the platform could actually do. And there have been a lot of e-commerce solutions throughout the years, and most of those, if not all, started as a B2C journey and then try to layer on top of that the B2B capabilities. We started from day one with the goal of building the best B2B solution in the world, and then we can always do B2C. It's a much easier transition path than the other way around. But one of the key elements of that journey that we feel like separates us from the pack is we've taken our product and given it the ability to handle complex transactions. The most complex thing that you can imagine, building a space shuttle or and configuring that, down to regular stocking orders, bulk orders where you're adding pallets of goods in some sort of an order grid, or it could just be mundane. I need a spare part, I forgot to order it, I go in, I order brake pads or a spare shirt or whatever for a customer. So we've done all that on a single software stack. And then to take that a step further, we've built it in a way that allows our partners to layer applications on top of that. And I'm going to introduce Christopher Moyle from SixVertical, and they've done exactly that. They've taken it and built on top of our product complex or more advanced applications. But I want to just do one more thing before I introduce him. If I had one problem that I could not solve in the e-commerce world, Chris would be the first guy I called. I've known him for years, and this is truly a genius in the e-commerce space. So I hope everybody now perks up and listens to everything Chris has to say.
All right, thanks for that glowing introduction, Todd. My name is Christopher Moyle. I'm a managing partner of SixVertical. SixVertical is a relatively new Apttus implementation partner, and we focus solely on implementing their e-commerce product. So Apttus is unique in the enterprise e-commerce software market, in which it's the only vendor where the e-commerce application is really built as an extension of the CPQ software. And as such, it shares much of the same data model and underlying architecture as the rest of its quote-to-cash products. So this shared architecture and this shared model really offers some compelling business benefits. And with the right product planning and expertise, you can leverage this common architecture and shared data model to really deliver high-performing and high-quality e-commerce customer experiences. And this is including for some of your more complex CPQ business processes like pricing and product and customer models. So this is what we've really been focusing on at SixVertical, is leveraging this common platform, this common data model to deliver really fast e-commerce experiences on the Apttus Intelligence Cloud. And the reason why we're doing this is we recognize that the path from quote to order, it's evolving, and we want to help the modern enterprise adapt. So in a perfect world, your quote to order goes something like this. The customer goes and they request a quote, sales rep goes out, gets all the approvals, configuration, and pricing to build that quote. They send the quote to the customer reviews the quote, approves it, digitally signs it, sends it back, and hopefully ultimately an order gets placed. But as we all know, few utopias actually exist, so the quote to order process actually looks something more like this. The customer is unpredictable, and understandably so, while they're trying to go out and get the best deal for what they're trying to purchase. What ultimately ends up happening is you see a lot of abandoned quotes or quotes that just end up going nowhere. So imagine if the quote could adapt to the customer's changing expectations. Sending the quote to the customer is really no longer the end of the quoting process, but the start of a self-service journey for the customer, where the customer is really in control of the buying process. So imagine all this happened, the customer was able to take the quote and turn it into an order, all without having to contact your sales reps even one time. And so that's what we focus on at SixVertical, is finding that space for CPQ and e-commerce to really work together, where the customer can convert a cart and modify the cart items in that cart and convert it into an order, all without human intervention. And we've really developed this functionality in an omnichannel, high-performing enterprise e-commerce experience with modern web technologies. So our approach to this really has three parts. The first is integration, and what I mean by that is at SixVertical we've developed IP to allow in a few clicks or in a few steps have a customer take a quote, convert it into a cart, and ultimately convert that cart into an order. The second part of our approach is intelligence. So now going back to this idea of developing on top of a shared architecture, shared model, we understand that a lot of the data that's in it, it's complex. There's a lot of configuration and a lot of options going into that for your CPQ users. And a lot of this may not be relevant to your e-commerce customers, your e-commerce platform. So what we've developed is a way for our platform to be intelligent, to understand what data is supposed to go into it and present the appropriate data to the appropriate customers. Last is performance. In the e-commerce world today, customers expect high performance. They have high expectations when it comes to your e-commerce experience, much more so than, say, your CPQ users. So we deliver that high performance using progressive web app technology, and we achieve page load speeds and experiences that are 2 to 4 times faster than your traditional e-commerce experience. So what I want to do now, I want to switch over to the demo that I have set up. And I want to walk you through an experience a customer by the name of Diego Francis might have with his so Diego Francis, he's a contractor, right? He's responsible for purchasing and installing, let's say, new appliances and a set of new condo units. So first step of this process, Diego's reached out to a company by the name of JC Electronics. Now, JC Electronics, They are a CPQ, Apttus CPQ customer, and they've also built and installed a mobile application as well as a browser experience, an e-commerce experience. So in the traditional world, when Diego goes out and requests a quote and that quote gets sent to Diego, usually that comes through obviously email or fax. And really these forms of communication, they're asynchronous forms of communication. Emails can be ignored, even though in this day and age, probably 50% of people are still opening emails on their mobile device. Like I said, they can be ignored. So in our progressive e-commerce world, what we like to think of, or how these quotes would get delivered, is via a concept known as a push notification. Now, push notifications are great. They've evolved in recent years, and they're a lot more interactive with your customers. In our case, when the quote gets delivered to Diego, Diego can take some immediate action on this. Right from the push notification, he can take that quote, let's say he's already reviewed it, approves it, he can immediately convert it to a cart right from his notification. He can also obviously reject the quote, in which case it goes back to the sales rep to modify and probably send a new version over. Or he can open it up in the app and get more information. Now on the flip side of this, push notifications are great for Apttus customers because they can be tracked. Unlike emails, we know when the customer's seen it, we know if they dismiss it, we know if what actions they take on it. All of this is data that the Apttus business intelligence layer can really take advantage of to drive more compelling push notifications to the customer. Research shows that apps that deliver really compelling and engaging push notifications improve app engagement by up to 88%. So going through this, Diego's received this push notification notifying him that his quote is ready for the appliances that he wants to purchase. And right from here, he can open up the notification and it opens up the quote within his application. So just like what you would expect with a quote, we get the line item breakdown, all the items that are going into it, quantities for each, as well as pricing. Unlike, let's say, a PDF that gets delivered to a customer with a quote, Diego can actually open up each one of these line items and get more information about them. So additional product imagery, product information down at the bottom, as well as we start to get a little bit social with it with product reviews. So Diego, before he can take that quote and convert it to ultimately an order, he can get some reviews of what other customers have said about the products he's purchasing as part of his quote. So going back to the intelligence we talked about, so the underlying data for this application that I'm showing you is obviously stemming from the broader CPQ application that JC Electronics is working on. And with that comes some additional data, and we want to be intelligent in how we present that to the customer as an e-commerce experience. So the second to last item, you'll notice it doesn't have a SKU and it's got a unique icon next to it. And that's really because this item was delivered to Diego as part of a one-off, part of the quote. It's read-only. It's not something that would be normally available to the broader e-commerce customers as part of the catalog, but it's available to Diego because he's requested this quote and it's a one-off product bundle as part of his quote. So if Diego opens it up, when the Wi-Fi catches up, towards the top of it, this is really listed as a read-only product, so you won't have any of those product recommendation features, you won't have any of the product reviews that you get with a traditional product, and you can't add it to a cart. So you see here, some of the add to cart button isn't here anymore, and also he can open up the tab and see what additional products are included as part of the bundle here. So the next step in this process is converting that quote to a cart. So going back to our quote, down right at the bottom, right from his mobile app, Diego can take this quote and convert it to a cart. Now on this Wi-Fi, I've noticed this has been a bit of a slow process, but what's actually happening behind the scenes is this application is leveraging the core Apttus API, which means any business logic, any validation that you guys build into your CPQ applications as part of converting a quote to a cart. This application adheres to all of that. So you can see here, the quote's now been converted to a cart, and ultimately Diego can go through the checkout process right from his mobile device. So while about 50 to 60% of customers are experiencing e-commerce applications on their mobile device, research shows that about 15% of dollars spent with e-commerce applications actually happen on the mobile device. And this is really where the omni-channel experience really becomes important, because we still find customers are still going back to their browser experience to ultimately make those purchases. So what JC Electronics has done as part of being a Apttus CPQ customer is built an e-commerce application on top of Apttus. So using the same credentials that Diego entered into his mobile device to log into his mobile application, he can now enter here on the JC Electronics e-commerce storefront. And he gets brought to the home page of the JC Electronics e-commerce storefront. Now, without going into too much technical detail about this, I would like to mention that this website that I'm showing you, it's classified as what's known as a progressive web app, which means the underlying technology, it works like a web application, but then it's experienced like a mobile application, like something you would install on your tablet or your mobile device, meaning there's no more concept of really the overarching page loads, so navigation is very fluent, it's very clean. And it allows for Diego to have a much better shopping experience on the website. Again, right at the top, we show some product incentives. These are the same product incentives that Diego could expect to find on his mobile device. As well as going down, we see some additional product categories and featured products. Featured products is possibly some products that were stemming from Apttus Business Intelligence. You might have seen something similar on something like Amazon, where maybe it'll show a list of products based off of Diego's purchasing history here. So right at the top, you'll notice that we already have some items in our cart, and that's going back to this concept of omnichannel. So all the items that Diego put into his cart as part of the quote-to-cart process in his mobile device, he can now see all those items in his cart right up here at the top. Again, all the same items. And again, towards the bottom, you'll see that that product that's not orderable. Again, this is sort of a one-off product. It was a bundle that Diego's sales rep put together as part of the quote. So he wants to allow Diego to purchase it, but not the wider e-commerce audience to be able to purchase it and add it to their own carts. So at this point, Diego can go ahead and check out his cart. So the first step in the checkout process is obviously the cart review. This is a standard e-commerce checkout screen. It's really the first step. So at this point, Diego can review all the products going into his cart, change quantities on them, remove them, as well as go back into the product details for those and review it before he goes through the next step of placing in his order. Towards the bottom, just some other nice to have e-commerce features allow Diego to enter in coupons, calculate shipping costs all through like an integration with a logistics provider, and get his final order total. The next step is really, it's kind of an optional screen, but it's kind of a convenience feature to have on top of Apttus Business Intelligence. So there's already logic built into Apttus to deliver product recommendations. And so what you see here is a single product that's been recommended to Diego based off of the other items in his cart. So before Diego does his final checkout process, he sees this and he might add it to his cart directly from the checkout screen by clicking that add to cart icon towards the end. Last step, this is where customers enter all their billing and shipping address information. Now going back to this concept of a shared data model. So because Diego is already into the system and all the data is already there, he doesn't have to re-enter it when he's going through his checkout process. All of it gets pulled directly into the screen. And so at this point, Diego could change it if he wants, or it's real easy to continue on through the checkout process. Towards the bottom, since this is the last step, we see all the products that were going into our cart, as well as all the payment options available to Diego. It's the last item in our cart is that gas cooktop that we added as a recommendation feature in our checkout process. So Diego's going to go ahead and enter a purchase order number. Again, just like the quote to cart process, once the cart gets converted to an order, it takes into account all your standard CPQ API functionality. So any business logic or validation rules that you build into the system as part of converting a cart to an order, all that gets adhered to as part of this application. And so we see the final order, the final breakdown of everything Diego just purchased. And ultimately, what ended up happening, Diego took a quote, converted it to a cart, and converted it to an order, all without having to contact his sales rep even once, without having to send an email. All on his own between an omnichannel experience with his mobile device and the browser experience. Now, this isn't the end of really the order process. At this point, there's a lot of steps that happen after an order gets placed. Understandably, Diego, this is a big order. He wants to know where his appliances are. He has deadlines. So he's going to check in with his sales rep just to get an order status update. Now, this is a request that a lot of these requests come into sales reps, and we want to possibly use Apttus artificial intelligence to take some of these repetitive requests and figure out a way to save time from sales reps and give customers the information they need. So to get the order status of the order I just placed, I haven't built the screen yet for Diego to go in and find his order history, but what I have done is back on our mobile application is I built an integration with Max. So what Diego can do is go back into his mobile device, and right from the home screen, right towards the bottom of the right, you'll see a little chat window. And what this does is it opens up a chat interaction with Max. And so right from here, Diego can interact with Max and get more information about the order he just placed. So rather than type this in, I'm going to use the voice-to-text technology of my mobile device. What is the status of my most recent order? Question mark. Goes out to Max. Max looks at his order history, looks at the keywords, and right there in his mobile device, Diego was able to figure out the status of his most recent order without having to contact a sales rep, send out an email, really saving him time and saving JC Electronics time. So where do we go from here? Well, with SixVertical and e-commerce, our focus is really going to be on those things, those points I talked about, continuing to improve our intelligence features, especially leveraging Apttus API or Apttus AI and BI technologies. You know, there's a lot we can do with Max. As well as continuing to focus on performance improvements, continuing to focus on the consumer, and make sure they have the performance and experience expectations from their e-commerce application. And we're going to do all that. We're going to deliver all that as part of you know, that overarching omni-channel experience we talked about, so that you as CPQ, Apttus CPQ customers can really get the most value out of your investment. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. That was fantastic. So we can go back to the presentation. So let's just wrap up real quick. So what did you see there? You saw a great example of an omni-channel experience across devices and across sales touchpoints. And you saw a great example of Max, our intelligent agent, as well in action. So if you'd like to hear more about this, by all means, speak with us after the session. So let me just wrap up with so omni-channel B2B commerce. At Apttus, we like to talk about business outcomes beyond just features and functionality. We did some research with Nucleus. They wrote a paper on our e-commerce offering, and you're going to hear, we've got a whole slate of e-commerce sessions for you. You're going to hear common themes there about how Apttus e-commerce combined with quote-to-cash is driving revenue growth, reducing costs, and improved profitability. And you'll hear more about these business benefits there, like a better customer experience, improved employee effectiveness, increased catalog visibility, so that ability to expose more of your catalog automatically in front of the customer through the self-service e-commerce experience. Condense those sales cycles. You're not going back and forth between salespeople all the time. You've got the ability to offer that self-service experience and cost savings by being able to have your fewer salespeople and have people ordering self-service online. So be sure to check out these other sessions we have. We've got KUKA talking about what they're doing, some very exciting things with Apttus e-commerce. Nucleus Research is actually here. The analysts are going to be on with the customer-aligned technology, talking about how they're doing omni-channel, and again, going into more depth on those business benefits you're going to get out of Apttus e-commerce. eWeek is here. Founder and publisher of eWeek is going to have a talk with our GMs of CPQ and Quote to Cash about the Internet of Things and the rise of marketplaces, and any sales leaders in the audience, if you want to understand how e-commerce can work alongside your assisted sales process, we've got a whole session for sales leaders on omni-channel as well. So be sure to check those out. Thanks for coming out this afternoon, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.